Hello everybody, my name is Rachel and welcome to another reading wrap-up of sorts. Today I'm going to talk about some of the books that I've read in the past 2 weeks. These are the books that I did not read for the reading rush because I will do a separate wrap-up just for the 7 books for that readathon. And yes, if my voice sounds a little bit funny today, I've been having weird allergy symptoms. I have a sore throat and my voice has been failing me in the last couple of days, so I'm trying to talk in a way that my voice won't crack, and it's really annoying. I never lose my voice, even when I'm sick, so it's really weird that I'm losing it today. We'll see how long I can actually talk for. The first book that I want to mention here is Ancestral Night by Elizabeth Bear. As you can probably tell by the copious number of sticky notes in this, I have a lot of thoughts on it. I really enjoyed it. It's probably one of my favorite books of the year so far. I would love to do a separate review for this book because I think it deserves that, so I will commit to doing that at some point. I don't know when I will have time to do that, but I will do it eventually. This is a science fiction novel set in like a future interstellar empire that Earth and humans are a part of, and the main character, Hamey, is on a like salvage ship. It's run by an artificial intelligence named Singer, and the crew is her, another person, a man named Conla, and their 2 cats. They are given a tip about a derelict spaceship in a like white space scar, white space being a place where you can kind of travel faster than light, let's say. They find the ship that they want to salvage, and what they discover there, what happens to them after that point, everything just blows up. They discover shocking, amazing stuff. It involves like space archaeology, ancient dead alien civilizations and their technology, space pirates, and a lot of mental health issues. The way that mental health is viewed and treated in this world was really interesting, and I really felt for Hamey as she's struggling to understand like who she is, especially as she has been changed and put together again so many times by other people with her consent and also without her consent in some cases. And just, yeah, I have thoughts on that, so I will get around to doing a review, like a real review of this book at some point. Next, I read a graphic novel called The Thrilling Adventures of Lovelace and Babbage by Sydney Padua. I say this is a graphic novel, but it actually has a ton of text in it. It starts off as just kind of a historical explanation of who Ada Lovelace was, who Charles Babbage was, how they met each other, how they came to work together. Lovelace is commonly called the first computer programmer because she came up with kind of a punch card system for Babbage's analytical engine, which he never actually built. And then she died young, and that was kind of the end of that. But then, after recounting that, this graphic novel introduces the idea of the pocket universe and proceeds to tell a series of tales of what Lovelace and Babbage could have gotten up to if she had lived longer, if they continued working together and actually built the analytical engine. And it was a ton of fun. There are also a lot of footnotes where Padua explains what she discovered in her research of these people. She uses actual words and dialogue from people's correspondence, and I was just amazed at how much research she did to just come up with jokes and things like that. It was just really fun, and I really loved Padua's style. I think she works more in animation than anything else. She's not actually a comic artist, but I loved her style, and yeah. So this was just a lot of fun. I'd wanted to read it for years without really understanding what it was, and I'm glad that I finally managed to get this from the library. If it sounds interesting to you, I would really recommend trying to read this in print, in a physical copy of the book. I read it as an ebook, and it was really hard to read it in some cases with the tiny footnote text, or some pages where you had to actually turn it upside down to read things or whatever. It was a little frustrating, but did not diminish my enjoyment of it. Then I listened to the audiobook of The Planets by Dava Sobel. This is a short nonfiction book about each of the planets in our solar system, the history, discovery, symbolism of the planets. I think it was probably written shortly after Pluto was demoted as a planet. It mentions that, but the book is not very recent. It still covers Pluto though. I thought this was a really fun thing to listen to. I specifically chose it because it was relatively short and was on a topic that I already knew a lot about, because I wanted to listen to this while I was driving. I was taking a trip and I did not want to have half my attention on an audiobook that was completely new to me. So yeah, it did its job very well. It wasn't amazing, but definitely would be a good book to pick up if you know nothing about the planets or their history. This would be an excellent little primer on that. After that, I listened to another nonfiction audiobook, which was The Tangled Tree by David Quammen. This is all about the concept of horizontal gene transfer. It is mostly a historical look back at the research of scientists throughout the ages who were kind of touching on horizontal gene transfer, were kind of mavericks in that area, but weren't necessarily believed, and how, yeah, they were actually pretty right. It talks about a bunch of people that I had never really heard of before, or their research was never the focus of any of the books on genetics that I've read before. Particularly, it focuses on a man named Woese, who did a lot of research on this in the 70s and 80s, I think. It also talks about Lynn Margulis, who I had heard of before. She was married to Carl Sagan at one point, but I had not realized that she had worked in a genetics-related field at any point. So historically, this was just fascinating, talking about a lot of people that I had never heard of before that aren't typically mentioned in the history of genetics and stuff. And the idea of horizontal gene transfer is also just really interesting and really upends our idea of how evolution and genetics and heredity are supposed to work. And Quammen mainly approaches the history and explaining this idea by showing how the image of the tree of life has been used and refined throughout the ages when talking about evolution and genetics, from Charles Darwin to the present day, and how that image of the tree of life with the constantly diverging limbs that never converge again may actually really be incorrect, because it is possible to transfer genes between different species and converge those limbs again. It is a really interesting idea. So yeah, this was a great little side trip into an area of genetics that I really didn't know existed before, and I thought it was really good, and it was a really excellent audiobook as well. I listened to it very quickly and enjoyed it immensely. And ending on a super, super high note, I read The Lady's Guide to Celestial Mechanics by Olivia Waite. This is a historical lesbian romance novel, and I loved everything about this. Perhaps the only thing about this book that didn't super thrill me is the few scenes of physical intimacy that are part of the romance, and that is not a reflection of the quality of the book. It's just that I simply am not always into that sort of thing. But everything else, especially the emotional and mental aspects of the relationship between the two main characters, and the fact that this is such a feminist novel. It is about women believing in each other and supporting each other and becoming professionals in fields that are male dominated and that they are barred from because of their gender. The younger woman named Lucy is an astronomer. She had previously worked with her father, and most of her work and her calculations had been passed off as his, but after he dies, she wants to step out and become an astronomer in her own right. She is kind of taken under the wing of a countess named Catherine, who becomes her patron and supports her in her work in getting her translation of a work on astronomy published. And in turn, Catherine is basically an artistic genius, but she doesn't realize that or really believe in it at first. And so Catherine is supporting Lucy and being an astronomer, and Lucy is trying to convince Catherine that she is a real artist. And just because her chosen medium is embroidery doesn't mean that it's any less real art, I guess, than oil painting, for example. Just so much about that. There are these conversations that these women have with each other and what they say to each other, and just, it's so supportive, and I just felt like this is one of the most emotionally healthy romances I've read so far this year, and it was so good. I want to see more of that. There are also a lot of other women in the story. It's not just about these two women falling in love and their relationship. It's also about how they're connected to all these other women who are also helping each other and seeing the value in what they do or what they want to do. One of the things that made me know immediately I was going to love this book, Catherine genuinely loves embroidery. She enjoys sewing and stitching and working by hand like this. Not all of it. I mean, some aspects of it are boring. She even talks about that. But this is her love. This is her passion. And the other women in the story also have very positive feelings about embroidery. There's no one saying, oh, that's just boring, that's just tedious work, that's just purely decorative. And this completely reverses a cliche that I've seen in so many books, in historical fiction, in fantasy as well, where you have a very stereotypical, strong, independent woman, like a young woman who abhors doing embroidery, sees it as a form of like social torture and completely unnecessary. And I feel like that cliche is internalized misogyny. It's something that even women say about what they do, and my personal opinion is that women would not have spent so much effort and so much ruining of their eyesight in dim light over the centuries working fantastic pieces of art with embroidery and clothing if it didn't have value, if they didn't enjoy it, enjoy the process, or enjoy the end product. So I don't know where all this hate for learning embroidery, learning sewing has come from in literature, but this book was the complete opposite of that, and I love that so much. So I would highly recommend this book. Even if you're not interested in romances, there is something wonderful, almost like wish fulfillment feminist historical fiction in this book, with a genuinely good and healthy romance as part of it, and I loved it. That was a lot of gushing. I hope that I said everything I meant to say, but I kind of lost track of where I was going with all that, but hopefully my enthusiasm comes across well enough. So those are all the things I've read in the past 2 weeks that weren't for the reading rush, and like I said before, I will do a separate reading rush wrap up as soon as I am able to. My video schedule is becoming quite erratic from now through the end of August because I'm just so busy with various things, including using all of my free time to read for intense readathons because the newts are starting in a couple of days. Yay! So I really don't know when my next video will be out, but I hope it will be soon. So if you have read any of the books I talked about today, leave me a comment down below, let me know what you thought of them. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, bye.